August 9th, 1944. Southern Normandy, 2:17 a.m. The hedgerows are asleep, but the tanks aren't. A cold mist slides low across the bocage, clinging to the steel hulls of more than 100 exhausted Shermans crouched in a muddy French orchard. Their engines tick and groan as they cool, each metallic click sounding like a soldier grinding his teeth in his sleep. The night smells of wet soil, gasoline vapors, and the faint metallic whisper of overheated engine blocks slowly surrendering to the darkness. If you're new here and you want real, immersive World War II stories that put you in the cockpit, in the trenches, and behind enemy lines, subscribe now. Most people scroll past history, but you're here to experience it. So hit subscribe and like the video. The mission's only just begun. Somewhere behind the first line of tanks, a wrench slips and curses echo softly. Corporal William "Red" Mallory, age 26, kneels on one knee under a canvas repair tarp lit only by a red blackout lantern. He isn't supposed to be awake. He isn't supposed to be working. He certainly isn't supposed to be doing this. But he presses the back of his hand against the side of a Sherman's radial engine block and feels the temperature still radiating from it like the breath of a feverish animal. "Damn thing nearly cooked itself," he mutters. The tank commander standing above him on the hull nods grimly. "It did. We lost power halfway through the last push. She wouldn't climb out of second gear." Red doesn't answer. He doesn't need to. The reading on his gauge already told him what he feared. Another engine on the edge of seizure. He pulls the dipstick and drags his thumb across the oil. It's thin, too thin. Worst of all, it carries the sour smell of overheated lubricant breaking down under stress. The hedgerows have been suffocating these engines ever since the 3rd Armored Division began pushing south. The terrain is a nightmare: mud, clay, broken roots, and endless walls of vegetation, forcing the tanks to crawl in low gear for hours at a time. Engines meant for open terrain are slowly dying in green, claustrophobic tunnels. Behind him, a distant thump shakes a few leaves loose from the hedgerow wall. German mortars, probing fire. Red ignores them. He's grown used to the percussion, the subtle vibration through the soil, the metallic hum of fear in the air. He wipes his hands on his already blackened trousers and looks at the tank commander. "She's not going to make another 20 miles like this. Not even 10. The commander exhales. He already knows. Because rumors have been spreading through the division for days. Shermans are overheating at an alarming rate. Power loss is hitting every column. Temp gauges are climbing dangerously fast during the long pushes. And tanks that stop die. Somewhere beyond the tree line, a German 88mm waits for the next machine that slows down long enough to become a silhouette. Red stands and pulls the lantern closer to the engine. In the faint red glow, he sees the radiator hose bulging slightly, the connector clamps straining from pressure, and the airflow intake clogged with a paste of dust and mud. He remembers a phrase his old motor pool sergeant once told him. "Engines breathe, Mallory. Choke them, and men die." Tonight, he can smell the choking. He moves to the next Sherman, then the next. Same symptoms, same smell, same danger. By dawn, half the battalion won't be mission ready unless something changes. He pauses, listening to the quiet hum of night insects around the orchard, to the grinding moan of another engine cooling down, to the soft snores of exhausted tankers sleeping on top of their vehicles. He knows the regulations. He knows the limitations. He knows the ordnance rule book is thicker than a tank's armor plate. And he knows something else. The rule book is going to get men killed.
Red Mallory is not a rebel. He is not insubordinate. He is not one of those "I know better than command" types. He is at his core a quiet, grease-covered mechanic from Kansas who understands engines the way a doctor understands a pulse, which is exactly why tonight terrifies him. He wipes sweat from his forehead. The cool night air feels warm to him, but only because his whole body is bathed in engine heat. He looks at the tangle of hoses, pipes, and vents lining each Sherman's rear hull and whispers to himself, "This isn't going to hold, not for what's coming." And what's coming is no secret. The division is preparing to push east hard, toward the collapsing German escape routes around the Falaise Pocket. Every tank that can move will be needed. Every tank that stalls becomes a tomb for its crew. Red's lantern flickers. He sits back on his heels, and in the silence of that muddy orchard, something clicks, not in the engine, but in his mind. A memory from a month earlier. A conversation with an Air Corps mechanic who mentioned spare hydraulic tubing. A system bypass he once saw on a P-47 that kept pressure steady when everything else failed. A trick. Illegal. Unauthorized, forbidden, but effective. Red lowers the lantern. His heartbeat slows. His breathing evens. He knows what he's about to do. He knows the consequences if he's discovered. He also knows this. It might save every man sleeping in this orchard tonight. The gentle click of tank engines cooling down is the only applause he receives as he stands, wipes his hands, and prepares to break the rules of the United States Army Ordnance Corps.
3:02 a.m. The blackout lantern burns low as Red Mallory ducks beneath another Sherman's rear armor plate. Slipping into the cramped world he understands better than any field manual. Oil drips in slow, sticky tears from the engine casing. The smell of scorched metal hangs thick, an odor he's learned to fear more than German shells. He clicks open his canvas toolkit, wrenches, tin snips, pipe cutters, a coil of aircraft-grade hydraulic tubing he shouldn't even have. He found it 3 days ago, abandoned when a P-47 maintenance crew packed up and moved east. No one noticed when he rolled it into his own supply crate. Nobody cared. But Red cared. He knew, even then, that the Shermans were dying one by one. He angles the red lantern toward the radiator assembly, illuminating the swelling coolant line. It's overpressurized, fighting like a clogged artery. The real problem isn't the radiator itself, it's flow. Not enough circulation. Too much heat trapped in the system during low gear pushes. He mutters under his breath, "You boys are drowning in your own sweat." Behind him, a distant American machine gun rattles in the night. Short burst, then silence. Probably nerves. Every soldier in Normandy has them. Red barely flinches. His world is inside this steel beast. He traces the coolant line with his fingertips, stopping at a narrow junction where pressure builds like a pulse under the hose. This is the weak point, the bottleneck, the reason tanks kept losing horsepower halfway through each advance. He exhales, slow and steady. He can't ask permission. He can't file a request. He can't follow procedure. The armored push east begins in less than 48 hours. Corps Command wants the 3rd Armored to spearhead the breakthrough. If these tanks collapse in the field, infantry units behind them will suffer. German 88s will tear through the column like needles through cloth. There isn't time to be obedient, only time to be right. Red grabs the pipe cutter and steadies the coolant line in one grease-covered hand. The lantern's light dances across the metal. He hesitates, not from fear, but from reverence. Once he makes this cut, There's no going back. The Ordnance Rulebook echoes in the back of his mind. No unauthorized system modifications. Court-martial offense. But another memory speaks louder. A funeral service in Tunisia. A Sherman crew wiped out because their engine seized on a slope and left them stranded in the path of a Panzer IV. Red once swore he wouldn't let machinery be the reason men die. He squeezes the cutter. A faint metallic snap echoes in the orchard, the first illegal cut of the night. Coolant hisses softly, like a shushed breath. He clamps the tubing quickly, working fast, sweat dripping down his temple despite the cold air. The new bypass line fits snugly against the pump housing. He tightens the clamps until they bite. Pressure redistribution immediate. Radiator strain reduced. Engine flow finally breathing again. It's a small victory, invisible to anyone who doesn't understand engines, but Red feels it like a pulse stabilizing under his hands. He wipes the coolant from his knuckles and crawls to the next tank. Another Sherman. Same bulging hose. Same weak point. He works faster this time. His hands know the rhythm. Cut, clamp, fit, tighten. Cut, clamp, fit, tighten. By the time he finishes the fourth tank, the mist has turned to fog. Only the soft glow from his lantern, shielded under each hull, gives away the secret work happening beneath dozens of tons of American armor. Then he hears footsteps. Boots on wet earth. Slow. Careful. Getting closer. Red freezes, wiping his hands on his trousers and sliding the illegal tubing behind a pile of spare track links. The fog swallows the orchard, turning shapes into ghosts. A shadow stops just outside the tarp. Mallory? The voice is low, gravelly. Captain Hargrove, company commander, steps into view, face half lit by the lantern. He's wearing his tanker jacket open, helmet hanging loosely in his hand. He looks like a man who hasn't slept in 3 days. What in God's name are you doing out here? Red stands slowly, wiping grease from his face. Sir, just keeping the boys running. Engines are hot tonight. Hargrove eyes the open panel, the disconnected hose, the toolkit, the clamps. Then looks straight into Red's eyes. Are you following procedure? Red doesn't answer right away, not because he's scared, but because lying in the U.S. Army carries its own weight. The captain's jaw tightens, not in anger, but in exhaustion. Mallory, he says quietly, I don't care what the book says. I care about my men making it through that French gate tomorrow. If there's something wrong with these engines, I want you to fix it, however you have to. Red nods, a tension releasing from his chest. But Captain Hargrove steps closer, lowering his voice. Just keep it efficient and keep it quiet. He pats Red on the shoulder, then disappears back into the fog. Red breathes out slowly, looks at the hydraulic tubing in his hand, and returns to work, now with something he didn't have before. Permission without permission. He crawls under the 5th tank. Another cut. Another hiss. Another life saved. And the night around him begins to fill, not with fear, but with the quiet, steady rhythm of a mechanic rewriting the U.S. Army's rulebook under a Normandy moon. December 18th, 1944. Outside Bastogne. Snow wasn't falling, it was attacking. Sideways. Violently. Like nature itself was sick of the war and wanted everyone to go home. Inside an M4 Sherman tank, lovingly named Missouri Belle, because apparently giving a paper-thin death trap a cute name helps morale, Private First Class Dale Hutchkins stared through the gunner's sight trying to see a mile through snow, fear,
and terrible American tank design. If you're new here and you want real, immersive World War II stories that put you in the cockpit, in the trenches, and behind enemy lines, subscribe now. Most people scroll past history, but you're here to experience it. So hit subscribe and like the video. The mission's only just begun. On the horizon stood a Tiger tank. Not a roar and pounce kind of Tiger. No, this was the German kind. 57 tons of your life insurance policy just expired. A rolling cathedral of steel and engineer arrogance pointing its absurdly long 88mm gun directly at them. The crew didn't breathe. The intercom hissed, and Sergeant Bill Cordell, their fearless leader, delivered the pep talk of the century. "Dale, if that Tiger fires first, we're dead." Inspirational. Here's the math nobody likes talking about, especially Americans in the comments. The Tiger's frontal armor, 100mm of German Try-Me. The Sherman's gun, 75mm of "Please, sir, may I scratch your paint?" German engineering was like, "We forged this armor using the blood of the gods and metallurgical sorcery." American engineering was like, "We built 50,000 of these fast, so statistically a few of you should survive." Feel free to argue in the comments. I know some Sherman fanboys are already typing. But here's the part that breaks military logic. The man staring at that Tiger wasn't a decorated general. He wasn't a tactical mastermind. He was a 22-year-old farm mechanic from Nebraska who 7 weeks ago was fixing tractors and arguing with cows. And he was about to do something that every Army manual said was impossible: kill a Tiger tank from the front. Sherman versus Tiger was not a duel. It was a legalized mugging. Tiger sees Sherman, kaboom. Sherman sees Tiger, guys, maybe we should flank. And before some historian in the comments says, "Well, actually, the Sherman was good at..." Shh. Let the trauma speak. The Tiger could vaporize a Sherman from a mile away. The Sherman couldn't penetrate the Tiger's armor even if it drove up, knocked politely, and asked permission. By mid-December, the U.S. 9th Armored Division had lost 43 Shermans. Translation: Tiger spots Sherman, Tiger fires, Sherman becomes campfire. Shermans were mass-produced, one every 38 minutes, because nothing screams quality military planning like treating tanks the way McDonald's treats French fries. Meanwhile, the Tiger was a precision-built monument to overcompensation, 57 tons of "my dad works at Porsche." And yet, one farm boy, armed with illegal welding, pure spite, and zero respect for the rulebook, was about to flip the entire power dynamic. Not with fancy tactics, not with superior firepower, with baling wire. Against that kind of superiority, the official doctrine was basically avoid frontal engagement, flank, call air support, wait for tank destroyers. Translation: don't fight it, run away and pray someone cooler shows up. But in Bastogne, surrounded by the German 5th Panzer Army, there was no flanking, no air support, no tank destroyers, no heroic reinforcement montage. Just cold, fear, and Shermans dying faster than American optimism. Dale Hutchins was never supposed to be here. Before the war, he was fixing tractors in Nebraska and arguing with broken farm equipment like it was a sentient being. He understood metal not from engineering manuals, but from plowshares snapping in his hands and machinery that refused to behave unless you kicked it. He wasn't loud. He wasn't a glory chaser. He was just that quiet guy at work who solves problems while management holds useless meetings. And after watching Shermans burn like disposable Bic lighters, he stopped thinking like a soldier and started thinking like what he actually was, a mechanic. On December 16th, freezing, exhausted, and covered in grease, Hutchins noticed that every time their gunner missed a Tiger, they had no freaking clue where the round went.
The Sherman's gun sight had no precise markings. Every shot was basically aim somewhere. He remembered watching his father weld metal, how heat revealed weakness, and then it hit him. If they could see where each shot landed, they could stack impacts, repeated stress, microfracture, penetration. That night, with a generator coughing like a chain smoker, Hutchkins stole 4 strips of baling wire and welded them around the gun mantelet in a cross pattern, top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right. When the gun fired, the muzzle flash would illuminate the wires, creating a glowing reference grid so the gunner could adjust shot placement instantly.
A field-made targeting system. 0 cost, 0 permission, 100% illegal. Regulations banned modifications to combat vehicles. The punishment? Up to 5 years in military prison. Because apparently, the U.S. Army feared innovation more than German tanks. But Hutchkins wasn't thinking about paperwork or rules. He was thinking about not dying inside a metal coffin. At dawn, Sergeant Cordell and Corporal Blake saw the modification. Cordell stared at it like Hutchkins had welded a waffle maker to the tank. "You welded wire to my tank?" "Not to it," Hutchkins said. "For it." He explained the idea. 3 shots in the same spot could crack even Tiger armor. Cordell stared at him, processing it, then finally shrugged. "Fine, Nebraska. We'll try your farmer science." Hours later, a Tiger rolled into view, 1,400 yards out, looking like a bank vault on treads. Blake fired. The round struck high and right. The baling wire glowed red for a heartbeat. He adjusted. Fired again. Low left. 3rd shot. Same exact aim point. Penetration. The Tiger stopped. Smoke poured from its turret. A Sherman had just killed a Tiger from the front. Minutes later, they did it again. 2 Tigers down, 0 losses. The Army called it an illegal modification. The crews called it the farmer's grid. By December 20th, 14 Shermans had copied the trick. Suddenly, Tigers weren't invincible. They were vulnerable to baling wire and pissed-off farm boys. In the next engagement, Shermans destroyed 8 Tigers and lost only 2 tanks. No engineers, no fancy blueprints, no permission. Just a mechanic from Nebraska who ignored doctrine and welded hope to a tank. If that doesn't trigger someone in the comments, nothing will.